Apologies from Councillors Lunn and Hollier. Are there any other apologies?
On that one.
Okay, thank you. So if we progress through the agenda, item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of October 2024. Is everyone happy that they are a correct record? The nods of assent. So we can approve those. Then we'll deal with the declarations of interest. Does anyone have any interest to declare? No, not seeing any. Right. Public participation. Have we any registered speakers? Not. Okay, thank you. Item 5, the 2024-25 Veritale Progress Report.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides an update to the committee on interprofessional work that we've undertaken the authority, and my colleague Stuart Cutts will go through that work in more detail. In addition to internal audit work, Veritale also provides a number of other assurance and governance related services to the authority. So I'll pick up the other areas that I could provide.
Thank you, Chair. On the internal audit side, I'll take the report as read. If I can just highlight 2 or 3 aspects and provide a verbal update as well to members. On page 15 and 16 of your pack is the internal audit update with the progress in the table that's on page 16. I'll take that as read. If I could just highlight as the 4 bullets under other work. At the point of writing, we were unclear what the work was that was planned to do to complete. Myself and Michael sort of met recently to discuss that, and we are planning to revert to the budget management type of audit that was, members, if they can recall back to the July committee, was the initial intended scope of the other piece of work that was as part of that document. We get to fully scope, but we expect it to cover management and reporting as well as aspects of the setting of the budget. It's just timed better now as Mike and colleagues have been able to make developments and move things on from the previous chat we had. If I could just highlight finally paragraphs 9 to 11, which to highlight to members is possibly something you may not be aware of, but there's quite a significant change in the, dare I say, exciting world of internal audit in the public sector, where our standards are changing quite significantly in the sense that they are being revised, although content-wise, with from the work we've been doing so far, seeing a huge amount of changes, and I've summarised that in paragraphs 9 to 11. SIPA have very recently, the back of last week, issued their code of practice. So we now have both documents that have been published by sector bodies. So we will be having new standards from the 1st of April. And if I can point members to paragraph 11, we highlight that we will provide further information to the committee about how we, as your internal audit provider, have responded to those new standards, and it is likely that an updated internal audit charter will be required for the combined authority as well. Possibly, if I break now to take questions on the internal audit, then we can move to the other areas if members do have any questions.
Are there any questions? There's not.
Okay, Chair, so shall I just cover the other elements of the work?
Please.
Just adding to what Stuart's said, just the committee's understanding. Whilst we provide an internal audit service to parts of the authority, some of the internal audit work is been undertaken by RSN. Part of the sort of legacy arrangements for the North Yorkshire Fire and Rescue Service and the OCC, their internal auditor is RSM. So we have been in conversation with RSM just to make sure that our work has been coordinated. So at the end of the day, the opinion that the internal audit opinion the authority would see would be effectively a combination of the work that Verito has done with RSM. Just clarify that for. So in terms of the other areas of activity, Verito provides the information service and access to authority as data protection officer. What that has meant is we've been coordinating data protection activity across the authority, working very closely with the staff, particularly in the former the FCC and rescue service, where those staff were undertaking data protection officer activities. So working closely with those people, the aim being to develop standardised policies and processes and make sure there's sort of working relations act smoothly across the organisation. So that work is ongoing. We are also undertaking an ad hoc review in helping the authority to design and implement a new corporate risk management process. So that work is ongoing. So finding work and currently preparing actually a briefing paper for the corporate leadership team, setting out what we found and what our recommendations for the next steps are. So that work is also continuing. But that's effectively summarised the other activities that there is involved.
Okay. Any questions on that side of the report? Can I just make one observation? When I read this report, I think the progress section, there appeared to be a mix of things where, because we were just setting up, it's more consultancy advice in terms of new arrangements as opposed to seeing this stricter audit side. I think it might be helpful in this effect to that type situation that the report separates in future more clearly between the work we're doing on this internal consultancy set top here.
Yes, we can certainly effectively produce two access to the court separated entities.
If there's no other comments, are we happy to note the reports and some appreciation for the work that's been done? Okay, let's move on to item 6, the external press report.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll take the report as read and just highlight the key issue that was raised in the report, which is on page 27 of the pack. And as you know, we plan to backstop this audit for 24-25 and rebuild assurance in the preceding year. In terms of what this means, we will issue a disclaimer opinion upon receipt of the signed accounts following the 30-day inspection period. This is because the backstop date has hindered our ability to actually deliver the audit. In terms of context around audit opinion, ordinarily we'd like to issue a modified opinion, which is unqualified, vanilla, straightforward. The other opinions that we can issue are modified, and they'll either be a qualified opinion, adverse opinion, or a disclaimer opinion. This will be a disclaimer opinion. And this is where we cannot obtain sufficient evidence in sufficient time to deliver your audit because of the backstop. In terms of what we will deliver, we will issue an audit plan on how we're going to do the backstop audit and a completion report per our statutory requirements, and we'll also issue our auditor's annual report on your value for money arrangements. Expect to make recommendations in and around the combined authorities' arrangements to produce and draft accounts in a timely way. Also in and around oversight and governance arrangements relating to the authority's existing functions and its incorporation of police and fire. It's this year, but in Audit World, it's next year. And then in terms of financial planning arrangements, in particular, implementation of a medium-term financial plan. And again, we'll report these findings to the next meeting, which I believe is going to be in February, not yet arranged. Happy to take any questions on that.
Okay. Questions? Really a very short update, I think, at this point. Are we happy to note the update?
Thank you.
That's good work. Right, item 7, the Treasury Management update.
Thanks, Chair. So item 7, Treasury Management Update, page 29 of your pack. I'll assume the report's taken as read, and the recommendation is that members note and comment on the report. In terms of the Combined Authorities Treasury Management activities, this covers the activities excluding police and fire for the core and economy sides of the Combined Authority, as the other directorates have separate arrangements and separate government streams at the moment. As you'll see, because of the timing, we've presented a report to the half year, which is September 2024, because the next update will be due for the end of December, and there wasn't time to complete that in turnaround for this meeting. In terms of general highlights, the authority has no borrowings and no capital financing requirement because it currently doesn't have any intentions to borrow to invest in capital finance. It was decided that the authority would seek powers to borrow at the last Combined Authority meeting, but at this point in time, there were no powers to borrow money for the Combined Authority beyond police and fire and some aspects of transport. The values you'll see in the report reflect the fact that we receive a lot of funding in advance and have some quite lumpy cash flows due to receipts that we can pass through to our local authority partners, including transport. And the key table is a paragraph 3.5 of the report, which shows the interest receivable we've received against current accounts and deposits, the deposits being administered on our behalf by North Yorkshire Council.
Okay, are there any questions to Mike? Mike, the one that we talked about previously is the amount of money that's in current accounts as opposed to the investment. And obviously trying to ensure that we are in the best position in terms of maximising the income from deposits. If you'd like to share what you said to me, use the committee.
So there's two aspects to this. There's one in terms of the timing of cash flows. So the reason we had £15 million on current account at that point in time was because we are not currently sweeping cash and we're looking at arrangements to do that. And secondly, that we'd received quite a large payment with respect to transport that was due to be passported directly through to local authorities around that time. So it's an unusually high current account balance, I would say. And we're looking to take steps to better manage that in terms of maximising income. But it's part of the resourcing of the authority in terms of making sure we have the right rules in place to manage that.
Another question on paragraph 3.4 is the arrangement for treasury management services, which in fact sort of double handling arrangement there. Is that the optimum arrangement for us? And are you going to maintain it on that basis? And start with a long-term relationship at some point?
We certainly intend to continue for next year because our treasury management should continue to be fairly simple. And North Yorkshire Council, in terms of their economies of scale and quantum, have better investment arrangements that we would directly. And it would probably be it would be great value for money for us to bring in the expertise that we would need to deliver that as well. But I think in response to the previous question as well, we need to make sure that as we develop our systems, and we have a head of finance post that's currently out for recruitment at the moment who will be responsible for part of this, we maximise both the long-term deposits and the advantage from what we do have on current account as we do that using North Yorkshire's investment expertise.
Thank you. Anyone have any further questions? Any of that? Okay. Can we agree to note the report? Item 8, the draft statements.
So draft financial statements are at page 33 of your pack, and the recommendation is that the committee members note the content of the report, particularly the first appendix, which is the draft financial statements, and provide any feedback and comments prior to publication of the draft financial statement. So, as you heard in the update from Ms. Ars, we need to publish our accounts in draft for the inspection period of 30 days, and I intend to do that probably tomorrow or following any feedback from this meeting. In terms of the content of the financial statements themselves, I'll just give some brief highlights and assume things are taken as read. So as a combined authority, we were established in December, 20th of December, 21st of December, and we began operation on the 1st of February. So these accounts cover just the 2-month period effectively from that 1st of February operational start date, when staff TUPE'd into the authority, to the end of the fiscal year at the 31st of March. Over that amount of time, the combined authority spent about £2.5 million. The majority of that related to £1.4 million related to the actual setup costs of the authority and the legal and other costs related to that. And the remainder was staffing costs, operational delivery, and we delivered about 0.7 million through programmes in that period. Because of the way we're funded, we carry forward a very strong usable reserves position because we received a full half-year settlement for our mayoral investment fund money and some capacity funding. So we carry forward 9.7 million of usable reserves to invest in programmes through this and beyond. We also had £2.3 million worth of grants received in advance for earmarked programmes that we moved through. There is a point at paragraph 5 of the covering report. There was one outstanding technical query on the treatment of pension, and I've spoken to technical experts in North Yorkshire and taken other advice, and it's considered that the treatment presented in these accounts are appropriate, and we won't be making any further changes unless advised otherwise by the committee. As I mentioned, the intention is to publish pretty much immediately after this meeting, and at that point, Chair, I'll open it up to you and the committee members for any comments or queries.
Right, are there any questions on the covering report or the actual statements? So, reading the detailed explanations, I struggle a bit with the explanation of the pension fund arrangements at the bottom of page 52, top of page 53, that carry. I wonder if before they're published, we could perhaps see if we could something that would be a bit more understandable for ordinary members of the public. The accounts.
Yeah, we're going to have a look at that. That's a standard note, but a number of those transactions, because of the early stage of those, are probably at the stage.
Yes, yeah. In terms of our operating costs in the accounts, it's basically just a single item. I did wonder whether that figure is broken down a little bit more in terms of what we're actually selecting.
I think the reason it's presented in the way it is currently this year is we need to have a mind to maintaining the parity into next year. So as we've set our budgets and moving forward, we will probably present accounts for the combined authority areas by economic priority strands, but we also bring in the activities of police and fire. So what I didn't want to do in this set of accounts, given that the expenditure that we had was compared to where we're going relatively light, blow it out too much, so we had far too many categories in subsequent years.
So that will be addressed in the next year's accounts.
We will have a much more complex set of accounts for next year.
Yeah. And Also, obviously, there's the three reserves. And again, in terms of the explanation, perhaps particularly earmarked reserves, wondered if there might be a little bit more explanation for the notes, so the members of the public can understand what that's about.
Yeah,
fully.
And again, at that point in time, the earmarked reserves were effectively funding carried forward. We didn't really earmark until July.
Yeah.
So as we move forward, there'll be much more clarity on those things.
Right. If there's no other questions or comments, can we agree to note the report? Thank you very much. Okay. Item 9. The update on the review of the Constitution.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm picking up this report for Rachel, the monitoring officer, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. But this is a bit of a progress update on the review of the Constitution. As members will be aware, when the Combined Authority went live around about a year ago, the Constitution was drafted with some haste to pick up the urgency of the situation, and we, as an organisation, I would say, creatively borrowed one from a neighbouring authority that has broadly similar devolution deal and governance arrangements, and then have started a process of tweaking it over time to fit the characteristics and the practicalities of this combined authority. The combined authority, as a board, and this committee did make a decision some time ago to set up a more formal working group arrangement to review the Constitution, and that has been ongoing between the last meeting and today. So this report just sets out a little bit of an update on the work of that group, and these are set out in sections of the report. So I won't read through it page by page, but a bit of a summary on what's taken place. Several meetings have been undertaken by the working group, and it's decided upon an approach for the review. In terms of the entire Constitution, there are any number of ways that this could be undertaken, but the working group has decided to look at the police and crime element first, because it's, although only one chapter of the Constitution, it does cut through the rest of the Constitution in that it covers the financial and contract procedure rules and other areas which are duplicated elsewhere. So that piece of work has started, and it's made several recommendations already, namely to consolidate the contract procedure rules and the financial procedure rules from that Part 9 into Part 6, which covers the remainder of the combined authority. It's also agreed to remove some of the narrative and introduction from Part 9, which provides some background context to the organisation, but in terms of the Constitution, probably isn't the appropriate vehicle. And also asked at the last meeting just to look at the layout and the format of the Constitution more generally, and to take some best practice guidance from other combined authorities and local authorities, which is ongoing. In general, the working group still has meetings to undertake in the next few months. The next thing it will be doing in January is trying to gain a greater understanding of the police commissioner's role, the former police commissioner's role, and we'll be doing some joint work with the Joint Independent Audit Committee and the Independent Audit Committee, which looks at fire and rescue service and police service audit business.
We have certainly inherited a very complex set of arrangements. Right, does anyone have any questions or comments on that? Okay. Are we happy to note the report? Right, consultation response to local audit reform.
So, yeah, sorry, Chair. So this paper, page 79 of your pack, recently, due to some of the issues that we're experiencing around, and we've talked around earlier, around the backlog of local audits, the government have stepped in and are seeking to implement a strategy in order to remove the backlog of local audit and permanently address the situation in terms of the number of failures to report on time and accurately. So the main themes that the government have identified in the context of local audit are that there's a system failure in that 1% of local government funded authorities tend to report on time and properly. There's no early warning system within the local audit system to look at major local authorities that have recently ended up hitting financial difficulties, and the system is overly complex in their view. So the consultation, which commences from now, and the process of reform, which runs probably through to 2028, so it's quite a long-term reform, initially looks at the setting up of a local audit office, which will oversee this sort of thing, and initially is asking for a number of questions in consultation to steer that work. So within your pack, there is the consultation document and a copy of the consultation questionnaire. The consultation closes on the 29th of January, and the recommendation for the committee is that they review the consultation document and advise officers on the general principles of that consultation so that we can provide a response on your behalf, which we'll obviously share with you before it goes.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments on this in the attachment? I mean, clearly reform is required, given the very clearly identified problems that we have. In my own reading of the report, the approach of having a vision, figure 3, having a vision statement and core principles seems, I think, particularly welcome. Having efforts to try and improve recruitment of accountants and to, in fact, reinstate a sort of mini audit commission. Aren't both helpful, but what are other people's views on it?
I think I don't think they like to say things don't like to be aren't intended to be easy to understand. Yes. Unfortunately, it's just the way they do.
Would you like to take those thoughts away and perhaps construct a response?
I'll do that
if we have time. It might be useful to circulate to members.
Yeah, I'll construct a response and then share with members.
Okay. Is everyone happy with that? Okay, thank you. Right, on to item 11. The consultation response to the strengthening standards and conduct framework for local authorities. A significant consultation.
Yes, another consultation. For those members who've been involved with standards or audit committees in the past, this will be quite familiar because the subject's been debated for some time. As members will be familiar, I think we call it the new standards regime, although it's quite frightening to think it's 14 years old now. Comes out of the Localism Act 2011, and that was quite a sweeping change at the time because it removed many of the sanctions that standards committees had around suspension and disqualification, disbanded the Standards Board for England, and very much brought the standards regime into the domain of local authorities themselves. That's been reviewed several times since. There's been some suggestion from the monitoring officers, from standards chairs and audit and governance committees that it's lost some of the robustness and it's lost the ability to deal with the really serious cases of misconduct that have occurred in local authorities. So I've provided a little bit of background in the covering report, which again I won't go through in detail. But the last update that we had was from the production of the devolution white paper just before Christmas, where the government has made a commitment to reintroduce some form of review of standards through primary legislation, and is now seeking the views of local authorities as to what that would look like. To summarise, the changes that they're proposing are to reintroduce suspensions, potentially disqualifications for serious misconduct, potentially having a standard code of conduct across all local authorities rather than relying on LGA models or local models, and looking at having a central or national body to deal with appeals. I think they've mentioned in some correspondence previously that that might be the Ombudsman's office, but I think that's yet to be determined because I think there's questions over whether that's the most appropriate mechanism for that. The consultation is quite lengthy. It's over 40 questions. So I didn't feel it would be appropriate to construct a response through committee because we'd probably be here all day. But I have summarised the broad areas under section 4. And what I'm seeking from the committee today is perhaps a discussion or some suggestion about the spirit of a response if the committee wishes to make a response and the direction it may wish to travel. And on that basis, I would go away and draft a response for consultation with members. So I'd hand over to you, Chair, if that's okay. Yes. And for members to provide any feedback, I think particularly around the areas of suspension and disqualification, around having a standard code of conduct, or whether the combined authority wishes to maintain its own, or whether it has any views on the other areas which are encapsulated in this consultation. But the distinction that we would need to reach in that is between what you might have considered as a local authority at City of York Council or North Yorkshire Council, is that we have a slightly different membership here in the combined authority. We only have one directly elected member in the mayor, and the other members are appointed by either the constituent councils or by the combined authority. So there are already some mechanisms there which could be dealt with as sanctions through standards. But if you wish to firm those up, we would need to do it in the context of the combined authority.
So what's our members' views on whether we want to make a response and what form of response? That's the first question to ask.
Unfortunately, I didn't have time to get to this part of the agenda, so I'm just haven't read through it properly.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're investigating as well.
Yeah, at North Yorkshire Council, we had our standards meeting last week, and we did actually go through all the questions, and we have made a response. So that's what we've done. So we have made a response.
Rachel.
I've had a look at questions online because councillors can respond as well as authorities. And I've tried to have a look at questions, had a bit of a think. I have some ideas and views in terms of like our unitary authority in York, but for the combined authority, I'm struggling to form a view because we haven't got enough experience of it yet. We're too new. I'm not sure what you put in response. I do think that local authority powers are too limited at the moment. It leaves local authorities ineffective in dealing with complaints, and it needs strengthening.
I think Rachel summed it up very well. I think as a local authority, I think our standard actions need to be firmer, and I felt that for some time, but I'm not sure how it will impact on the combined authority because, as you've rightly pointed out, we are appointed. If we're not doing our job, then we can be unappointed and somebody else put in our place, and that's, I suppose, the key for this. I wonder if there was a sanction within a local authority, whether it should then preclude you from being part of the combined authority. It's just thought process at the moment.
Is the view that we'll leave it to the two local authorities to make their representations? We won't do a separate one as a combined authority at this point? Or do we want to just make some limited comments given how early we are in the authority's function?
I'm going to defer to Clive on this because he's head of our standards board, so I'm going to defer on it.
It is difficult at the moment because, and that's why we need to make it a better policy working out things, because we'll go down to parish councils. If you bring a parish councillor in standards, we can't actually put up say you will be suspended from the council for a number of days, we can't even tell them that they have to have training. We have to write to the parish council advising. We've had two meetings within the last month where I know it's cost thousands to actually bring the parish councillor to the council. But we couldn't do anything. Really, we couldn't do anything. So we need to actually make it much firmer.
So would the suggestion be then that we make a limited submission, certainly around in support of the principle
Yes.
of having sanctions, disqualification powers reinstated? I personally agree with, obviously, I don't think we, as in terms of representing my own authority, that we've got a particular position at this point. Seeing some nods of assent, I'm not seeing any disagreement. So perhaps that's one set of issues. What about the issue of whether we should have a standard? I think that's, as I say, I think I'm personally, given in terms of understandability for the public, I think it might be better to have a national rather than a local. But is there any consensus on that at all?
It's the most sensible thing. Whatever local authority it is, you need to be dealing with the subject in the same way as others. I would have thought.
I am slightly nervous about one size fits all because I find that actually one size generally doesn't always fit all. I'm slightly nervous. I'm not saying maybe there could be a principle and then the local authority can interpret down, but slightly nervous.
To give sort of qualifying support, taking into account of Councillor Rick's comment. Yeah. Are there any other aspects of this that we particularly wish to comment on? As I say, recognising we're relatively new to this, Rachel.
I'm a bit nervous about disqualification and giving local authorities the power to disqualify people and the ramifications for democracy in terms of who's eligible to be elected or not. I think I need to know a bit more about it.
It'll be abused to silence dissent, simple as. So the biggest question for me is who oversees the overseers of the system? For example, there's 3 local authorities in theory here. Why does York look at York's cases and North Yorkshire look at North Yorkshire's? If they're flipped over, you might have a fairer system. At the moment, you've just got a system that is, for want of a better word, corrupted by politics. Now, I notice in this report it's about whether the independent person should have a vote. Of course they should. The independent person should be chairing these standards meetings.
Is that a shared view?
No, I disagree with that.
Well, again, it just leads me to say who's overseeing the overseers. In theory, I would be much happier when I get my next standards case, no doubt, having it overseen by North Yorkshire and vice versa when it's a North Yorkshire case. York should oversee it. You take out the individuals and the individual politics out of the system. You want any thoughts?
Yes,
that's fine.
Absolutely. I'm also trying to see if there's a degree of consensus in putting a response.
You would have an alternative governance.
Can we pick up yours? There were a number of points you made. One was the issue about the independent member having the right to vote, which I actually think is quite an important issue. Would there be consensus around the table to support that point?
I don't think I have a view.
I would support that because I think if they are asked to do a job and not to have, not just be there to a say in it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there'll be one out of presumably one out of about 7 or 8, I presume, or whatever the size of the standards committee is. No? There wouldn't be the only person having to make deciding, the others having to say. But no, I think it was. Otherwise, you might not. It was difficult to get anybody, I think, unless they have some real input to have to get people to do it. So you might. If they thought they had a vote on the final issue, that would encourage more to get involved. Do it.
Yeah. Willingness to support that we put them in our submission, and that's yeah, okay. No, some abstentions, but yeah, okay. I think there is majority support to that point.
Dave, can I just add to that, just to back Rachel up about the worry about disqualification or censorship or whatever? I think if we do have that kind of system, there needs to be a really robust appeals process.
Yes,
I think that's really important.
I was going to come to the next piece. Well, as you raised it, let's deal with the appeals issue. Is the consensus around the table that we should support that principle? Yes, okay, so we've got agreement on that one. The second point was that the independent person should chair the vote panels. Is that a shared view?
No.
I personally have more mixed opinions on that, and there's a no here. I don't think there is a consensus on supporting that one here. I'm not sure whether there's anything else we can say on that. How reasonable is a consensus around the table? Right, is there any other issues? So we'll just better come back to the disqualifications. There's obviously not a consensus about the disqualification point, but I think there was consensus about the sanctions being local, wasn't there? Okay. So if we can draft something around that, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll be really helping feedback
and circulate it for any cognitive early time scales. So to see if we can make sure everyone's happy with the exact way.
What about the issue of, sorry,
Caroline, and then
Sorry, Mark. I just want to pick up a small point. When we go through standards procedures, I think it's really important that whoever the member is involved is kept up to date and knows what is going on. Because from colleagues, I've heard that there are some times in the process where they have no idea what's going on and no one will speak to them. That's no good. The individual, if they are under an investigation, needs to have a mechanism to be able to A, know what's going on, and B, feed into the process. And I don't see that happening all the time.
Other people been referred to standards, and I've got a clue why they've been referred to standards.
Exactly.
So that is clearly you can't tell somebody they've been referred to standards and not have a clue why. If they ask for why, and they need to be told, they need to know what the basis of the complaint is. Otherwise, it's ridiculous.
Well, you can't. The individual then cannot defend itself, and that seems an anomaly within the system.
I came off standard. I was on standards. I'm married for about 7 years, and I came off it again because I got bogged down with just too many. It became councillor who didn't like another councillor basically, and making a complaint. Slightest thing, there'd be a complaint going in, and it just got silly. And eventually I thought, I'm not getting involved with standards anymore because it was just basically a waste of time to me. It was mainly about there were some issues occasionally, but it tended to get very trivial and personalised. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes that does happen. But I mean, obviously, we do need to start this course
where that having happened in the past in our own patches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
Well, just following up on that point,
on processes, Mark. Yeah.
just following up on that point, that's why I think it will be so easy now, even without the consultation, to look at the constitution of these three local authorities, whereby, for example, North Yorkshire would look at York cases, York would look at North Yorkshire and whatever. That would take out exactly all those points about trivia, personalisation. You've got the opportunity to do it.
Yeah. Take a more objective view of the issue and not be closely connected to the people involved.
Yeah.
Okay. Two strong supports. Is that a shared view around the rest of the table?
Yeah, I'd be very, very worried about that one. Only reason being, would say York want to actually take on North Yorkshire Council ones? At the moment, there was over 2,000 people put in complaints. Of those, there's only a handful actually gone to full standards. But because there's so many coming in, we've actually at North Yorkshire now got 7 independent people on board compared with 1. And we've upped the number of members on it from, I think was 6 up to 10 because of the workload. The workload is incredible now. That's what you'd have to be careful of. It really is. It really is. We were only when I was put onto standards, we were told we were only going to have 4 meetings a year. We have probably 1 a month now.
Never. I mean, to say how many meetings you're going to be, you don't know how many complaints you're going to get or how many referrals. So it's impossible. Oh, it's only so many meetings a year. It just usually something comes up when there's an issue and people get upset about something. That's when you get a lot of complaints.
But, okay, Caroline.
I think it's fair to say, Clive, and you can tell me to shut up, that a lot of the work that's coming into standards at the moment is generated by parish councils. The parish councils are in a mess, and we have 730 plus in North Yorkshire parish councils. The lack of parish council clerks is not giving the parish council the professional direction that they should have, and we end up with all these parish councils almost disintegrating because there's too much infighting, which is the problem that we have. So it's a big ask that North Yorkshire would make of City of York to look at all these parish councils, because I'm quite sure City of York doesn't have 730 parish councils. So you can see the dilemma. And do we make a demarcation? Do we say that within North Yorkshire, the North Yorkshire councillors are part of what Mark's suggesting, the independent panel, but actually the North Yorkshire councillors sorts its own parish councils out? Otherwise, you're going to be absolutely swamped. Do you see where I'm?
Yes, no, absolutely. Now, obviously, the discussions become very much focused on our individual authorities there, as opposed to the combined. As a participant in a potential joint arrangement. I think that's something that really, to be fair, we would have to have further discussions in our individual authorities about. So I'm not sure it's something that we should appropriately comment in this national consultation after this discussion.
That's my reluctance to support Mark in that, because we've got huge issues with the parish councils, etc. So that's my reluctance to get involved.
think we'd be in difficulty trying to commit ourselves to an arrangement in this consultation without having agreements in our individual authorities first. So I suggest that we, sorry, Mark, we're going to leave this one.
Well, you can see why I've raised it. Just an opportune point.
I think it was extremely helpful.
As I said, if you're going down the route of sanctions and disqualification, that is an essential question: is who oversees the overseers?
Yes, well, we've agreed that there should be an independent appeals process. I think that's absolutely fundamental. So, anyway, if there's no other comments, can we ask Paul to take that away and draft something on the basis of the ones that we have agreed, I suppose the ones that we've not had the consensus on, and to circulate it to members of the committee before we get it submitted. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for, I think, quite a thoughtful discussion on any questions in there. Okay, let's move on. Item 12, the programme of work, pages 165 to 168 in the papers. Are there any comments on this future work programme? I just flagged that I had a letter as chair of the committee, which I first circulated to members, raising some questions about our role over the governance issues around open data, transparency, those types of issues. Perhaps that's something that we should be thinking about putting on the future work plan as something to look at in more detail. You all have, I mean, I suppose sent copied the letter to all of you. Would that be agreeable? Yeah, some notes. Right. If there's no other comments on the word Mark?
Just going back to what I raised at last meeting, would it be appropriate under governance monitoring and evaluation framework? There was actually a piece done on value for money, shared working and such like. Again, keep referring to 3 authorities. It's got to be scoped to be integrating job systems and such like to actually save money.
Okay. Are we happy to put that on as a possible item, how that issue is being dealt with?
Just from an officer perspective, it might be worth bringing a paper at some point that explains how some of that is already done, because in the context of the organisations that were brought together, there's quite a large amount of collaboration between the OPFCC and Fire alongside the police force as a separate public body. So the challenges or the considerations we need to make in terms of looking at the whole authority approach do also consider some external stakeholders. And a lot of our, as we discussed there on treasury management and other things, we do rely on North Yorkshire Council and York for quite a lot of our back office services as well. So there's quite a high level of collaboration already. We obviously pay for that, but it's paying for resource within the local authority, so it's kept within the wrapper. So I'd suggest probably a start overview in terms of how we are already doing that to allow the committee to challenge and move forward.
I certainly think it'd be very helpful to get a structure table and possibly even costs alongside it. Thing that's going through my mind at the moment is the fact that we've just lost CEO of the police, and yet we don't really seem to know whether there'll be an appointment there. We don't really know in terms of why he left, and again, it's all part of the separate structures, and do we actually need them all?
Well, I know Rachel has discussed that with you. Do you want to take the response on that one?
Yes, I'm quite limited in what I can say and indeed what I know in terms of the process. But I suppose as a point of clarification, that you're referring to Simon Dennis, who wasn't in fact at the time he left the chief executive. He was the corporate director for police and crime. So looked after that direction.
Sorry, there's that many titles.
Yeah, I understand the confusion because prior to the election, Simon was the Chief Executive of the Office of the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner, but as part of that due process in coming into the Combined Authority, that job title changed. So at the point when he left, he was no longer one of the chief officers, although a member of the Combined Authority leadership team. The authority did issue a press release last week, just notifying the public that Simon had moved on. That didn't state there that it was a voluntary redundancy that Simon had sought in consultation with the chief executive and other officers. Other than that, the reason why I probably haven't heard much more in the meantime is that there's a process to go through for redundancy in terms of consultation and negotiation. So that was a decision of the Combined Authority at the beginning of December, but then that's subject to further discussions. So that I think the date that Simon left was actually after the New Year, so it was only last week, beginning of last week, I think. So that's as much as I probably know and can say in this meeting. But there is a little bit more information in the press release for the review.
The only thing I would add on to what Paul said there is at the point in time in May when the under the order the operations of the former Office of Police and Fire came into the Combined Authority. From that point in time, James Farrell was the chief executive of everything, including those operations. So Simon's role as CEO ended with the mayoral election and the transfer of those powers, just to be clear.
That's why it would be so useful to have a full breakdown of all this corporate structure and the costings of it all. And again, I just go back, you probably won't be able to answer, but is that post going to be filled? Wouldn't be.
But what we can say a redundancy is a redundancy, so therefore that post will not be replaced like for like.
Well, that's why having a corporate structure and being able to look at it and say, well, is there any way that savings can be made here or there? At the moment, we're just blind with it all.
Okay, I think that's something we'll have to deal with offline. You know, we are obviously not responsible as a committee for the corporate structures. That's the Combined Authority that's responsible. But clearly, us understanding that, being able to ask appropriate questions for an Audit and Governance Committee is important. So if officers could take that one away and see how we deal with it and see it, and also if we can help inform members in terms of promotion marks.
If it's helpful, I can send you some documents that are published on the website, because we do publish a pay policy statement each year in which we have to publish all salaries above a certain threshold along with job titles. So I can send you that if that just helps.
It wasn't so much getting individual salaries, it was just looking at the whole structure and the costings of it over three authorities and saying, well, can money be saved there? Can money be saved there? Is the duplication there? Is the duplication here?
So if we can note the work plan with the suggested additions that we've talked about, is it agreed? Thank you very much. Right. Urgent business. I'm not aware of any urgent business. Date of next meeting. We need to arrange an additional meeting in February to deal with the correctly. And Williams, I think that's on to you.
Yeah, I mean, I can, if you want to, during the formal meeting, I can run through some dates.
Right.
Agree one.
Okay. We just hang on for a couple of minutes and sort that after the meeting. Right. Okay. Thank you everyone for your attendance and contributions today. And I'll close the formal meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So dates I had in mind in terms of an additional meeting. Is Monday the 24th of February in the morning.
At the moment, we can do that. Yes.